Welcome. This is Jeff Phillips with Accountingfly. Hope you're doing fantastic today. We are going to spend some time talking about an incredibly important topic. What do public accounting candidates want in their next job? I'm calling you from Pensacola, Florida, my hometown and home of Accountingfly. I see a lot of familiar faces from around the country, and we're really, really glad you're here. We have been doing a lot of work around retention, around obviously finding qualified talent. That's our business. But also, we've been spending a lot of time speaking to the industry about what it takes to keep really good people and what it takes to attract the right ones, the right candidates to your organizations. So I welcome your feedback, Jeff at accountingfly.com. Welcome your success stories. We welcome things that aren't going well and where your challenges are, because this is going to be an ongoing issue for all of us, quite frankly. I recently spoke at the Rainmaker Alliance meeting with a panel. And a lot of the information that we learned from developing that panel is what this presentation is all about. And it was a fantastic learning exercise. So I appreciate that you're here, or appreciate that you are listening or watching a recording of this as well. So this is an extremely important topic, obviously. It's important because it's the future of your firm, if you're in a firm. It's also the future of the profession. And as I see it, the problem that we're facing is that we're losing a lot of talent to corporate jobs, and it's really difficult to recruit qualified talent right now. It's always been an issue, but it's worse now than ever before. So we're going to talk about what it's going to take to change. And before I get into that, this is me on the left, and my contact information. I'm at jeff@accountingfly.com, and my Twitter handle is at jeffphillips_. And the picture on the right is my 3 kids on the day they met their baby sister. That little girl, the baby, turns 1 year old today. So this is a special day in our family because that baby is now 1. So that day, a year ago, it's hard to believe this much year has passed. So for all of those of you who have young children and experience a lot of sleepless nights, keep going. We are, and that year went by really fast. All right, so that's me. Back to the issue at hand. And I mentioned the problem. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about the problem, and it's our opinion, and I'm sure you feel the same way, that the race for talent is over and that the talent has won. We're in a changing economy. We are in a period of time where public accounting is losing more talent to private industry probably than ever before. And we're going to deal with it because we believe that there are changes you can make inside your organization that can attract better talent. And we've seen it happen across the industry, across the profession. And those same changes can retain talent. Absolutely. But it does take some work, and it does take some change management, and it also takes changing of opinions, especially of senior leadership. A couple of issues. This is a quote that we found from an advisor to our company, Rebecca Ryan. Many of you know Rebecca. But the perception among high performers is that many accounting firms are not great places to work. And it's why we're looking for private opportunities. High performers expect a great culture, so it's imperative that you take time to develop a great place to work and ignore it at your peril. I want to talk to you today about what makes a great place to work in public accounting. So a few facts and figures. We know that from the AICPA, their issues survey, that finding qualified talent is the #1 issue this year among all firms with 2 or more partners. So that's two-man shops up to Deloitte responded. Tens of thousands of accounting organizations responded and then identified as finding qualified talent as that top issue. facing the future of their firm. So we know we're in this with this problem. And I want to tell you about an interesting survey that's coming out from Boomer Consulting. And if you don't know Boomer Consulting, and Sandra Wiley, Jim Boomer, Gary Boomer, they do a lot of amazing work with their clients around leadership development and training. So they're doing a survey, really a research paper of accounting firms who have sent a survey, a pretty detailed survey to everyone who's left their firm in the last 5 years. Over 500 former staff members have filled out that survey. And so it's really compelling and very interesting information. They are not quite done with the research project and the white paper, although if you want to email me, we'll make sure we can get that in your hands. But one of the interesting things that came out of this was that of the people who have left these firms, of the 500 that did leave, 92% of them left for private industry jobs. And I'm curious if you hear that and think that's shocking, or that's par, or that's a little bit above average. And you're welcome to chime in with comments to the question panel. But what I found was really interesting, and I think you will too, is that when they asked them the number one reason why they left, it wasn't compensation, it wasn't the 30% pay bump, which we tend to hear in exit interviews a lot. No, the number one issue, at least for 70% of the people that left, said it was work-life balance. So it's just interesting how there is a perception problem, and there is a work-life balance problem. So what do we do about it? Now, Accountingfly also did a survey of young CPAs and college students as well, and asked them what were the factors they were looking for in their next job. I was expecting compensation, and I was also expecting like career path, and I was expecting information like just exposure to senior partners. What we got was a resounding work-life balance was number one, followed by mission and vision of the firm. They want to respond to the mission and vision of the firm, the culture, and then lastly was compensation. Trying to make heads or tails of this is hard, but as far as compensation is concerned, I believe the reason why it was listed fourth is because in this economy, competitive compensation is the expectation. It's not as though if you offer great work-life balance and you pay poorly, you're going to hire. It's everyone's going to have to be on par with compensation, but it's the other factors that determine if you get the right talent into those right seats. And I will tell you and give you names of firms who can confidently say that when there is an open position, they get the very best candidate for every position across their firm and across multiple locations. And the ones that do, they offer more flexibility and work-life balance. They have a clear mission and vision, and they have a great culture, and they've taken time to invest in that. So to answer the first part of this presentation, which is what do public accounting candidates want in the next jobs, you're looking at it. Work-life balance, a clear mission, a great culture with a great place to work, and standard compensation that's competitive for public accounting. So we could just end there, but I don't think that's the right place to end, because there's an opportunity really for each of you and for us to take the profession and to take our own firms to the next level. It's going to take that. So I want to spend time talking about how it is that you create work-life balance, mission, culture, and compensation. I feel like everything that we have talked about has been generic up to this point. And I feel like the things that you are hearing are also very generic. And we want to put an end to that and try to step up our game and bring in better information. If you take your firm to the next level, you can attract the very best talent in your market. And I think it's important to go outside of the industry to start to have this conversation. So what I'm going to bring in here in just a second is a story about a Silicon Valley company that has remarkable retention. I do want to make one point here that there's a financial implication of poor retention issues, and then we'll get to the role model example with Gusto. On average, across public accounting firms, local, regional, there's about a 19% turnover among staff. That's average. So if you fall below that or above that, you should be paying attention to these types of numbers. The costs of losing the billable performers are pretty staggering. 1.5 times their salary, plus the lost billings, plus the lost time and productivity. So for every person you're leaving, every person you lose, you're talking about 6 figures of real lost income, bottom line impact to the organization. So at roughly 20%, that's a little bit scary. And so it's important to invest in retention, and it's important to invest in recruitment because you really have to get there. And to have a thriving organization, you've got to have the right people. That's recruiting, and you've got to keep those people as long as you can. So hopefully that's helpful. Now let me tell you about Gusto. Gusto is a partner of Accountingfly's, and we were drawn to this company because they were named by the San Francisco business newspaper, the newspaper in San Francisco, as the best place to work in Silicon Valley. And I want you to think about how competitive Silicon Valley must be for talent, where all the wages are high, where stock compensation is off the chain, it's through the roof. And this is an incredibly do or die competitive market. So we met the team from Gusto last year and became very interested in them. And I thought to myself, if Gusto can compete and win in Silicon Valley, what lessons can we learn from Gusto and pass along to public accounting? So we're looking for something non-traditional, obviously. So Gusto and Accountingfly wrote a book late last year about building culture inside public accounting firms, how to retain talent, how to recruit talent. So we've learned a lot about each other, and we're fascinated by this company. And by the way, so let me tell you about Gusto. It used to be called Zen Payroll. They're on a mission to put people first, and you will see that that is exactly what they do with their talent. They have 300 employees in San Francisco and Denver. They have achieved this early success, not only as a company, but from a retention standpoint and a talent standpoint, with this adherence to building a great culture where the very best people are attracted to and want to work. So San Francisco Business Times named them the best place to work in San Francisco. You think about Google and Facebook and Dropbox and Uber and LinkedIn, and it goes on and on and on. And this is the best place to work. They receive 30,000 applicants a year, and they hire less than 1% of them. So the other reason we became interested in Gusto is because they serve the accounting industry. They have a payroll product that accountants use to run payroll for their small business clients. So, but as you learn about Gusto, and as I tell you about some of their HR practices and how they built a great talent, great work-life balance, great flexibility, and a great culture, I want you to think about something else. That when it comes to talent, Gen X or Gen Y talent, the people we are all trying to recruit, this is also your competition. This is who the young high performers are evaluating and comparing to public accounting firms. So if you think that some of their policies are weird, just understand that that's what we're up against. And so I wanted to show what Gusto does in order to provoke and maybe inspire you to how you could create a better work-life balance for your team. You could create a stronger sense of mission. You could create a better culture, etc. All right. So we'll proceed. And I want to offer a note here to on the generational gap, because what Gusto sees, and you don't have quite the generational gap in Silicon Valley that we have in public accounting. But a word about baby boomers. It's really remarkable what the baby boomer generation has done. The work ethic, the commitment to getting the job done, the long hours in the public accounting profession is really kind of just remarkable. Their contribution is remarkably profound, because baby boomers, they don't know what a 40-hour work week is, right? And work-life balance to them probably doesn't exist. We wouldn't have the industry that we have today if it wasn't for the baby boomers. What's interesting is, as we see this next generation coming along, it's just different, and that's okay. But the baby boomer clients we work with, we talk a lot about asking them to get comfortable with offering flexibility, to get comfortable with staff getting work done out of the office, to get comfortable with trusting teammates to not be right in front of you as you get the work done. And I think, too, the opportunity for baby boomers is absolutely huge right now to influence this generation, the next generation that's inside your firm, the generation that you're recruiting. It's really a chance for glory, in my opinion, where these partners can become mentors right now. Think of all that there is to teach, but there's got to be a give and take. There's got to be an openness to work with the Gen Yers, with the millennials, right? So I just think about the next generation, this millennial generation. They want to have an impact on day one. They respond to vision. They respond to mission. I think a lot about how the baby boomers are going to hold this generation accountable, because they like to follow the bright, shiny ball and what they're interested in. Well, and the way that the mentorship can work is by clearly stating, here are the business objectives, and trying to hold the millennials accountable to that. But keep in mind something, just out in the technology world, retention is a huge issue. Generation X, they stayed at a job on average for 3 years. Generation Y stays at a job on average of 1.5 years. So what Gusto is able to do, with about a 20% retention rate in technology, Gusto has it narrowed down right now to 10%. So that's a note on our generational gap, and I think it's sort of time to just look at what these core items are that we are going to be offering, since the talent has won. And the first one is flexibility. So flexibility is absolutely in the eye of the beholder. I don't think you can create a flexible policy. I believe that the firms that approach this the right way set expectations on an individual level. To a lot of people, flexibility means location. I know when I was at my last job at Monster.com, I wanted to move home to Florida, and my clients were in Texas. And they allowed me to do that. And I was able to work from Pensacola while raising a family and serving clients in Texas. So to me, flexibility meant location. To a working mom CPA, flexibility probably has a very different meaning. It probably means the ability to perform as a part of the team, but also have some flexible hours to come and go to get work done. So here's some information from Ernst & Young's millennial survey. 78% of millennials are in dual career couples, as opposed to the baby boomer generation, which was on average of 48%. So think about the demands of the dual career couple. And I imagine that the staff that you're recruiting and the staff that you are trying to retain are probably dual career. If they have children, which is probably the case, there are so many time demand expectations on them outside of work, and without somebody back at home manning the ship, there has to be shared responsibility. So you're allowing flexibility from your staff to be able to take care of those tasks. We have so many working moms who call us asking for us to help them find flexible opportunities, because their CPA firms are not allowing them to work that out. Ernst & Young also said that 75% of millennials expect to have a flexible work arrangement and also expect to be promoted on their merit. Okay, so this flexibility concept is gigantic, and it means different things to every single employee in the office. You ought to be thinking about the hours expectations with regards to flexibility. We know that tax season is incredibly difficult, or busy season is incredibly difficult. How can you try to build in flexibility into that, and also set expectations that this is not a time of year where we're going to be, as flexible. Creating flexible work opportunities on an individual level, and in a large sort of bigger picture, long-term picture, switching to value pricing, project-based pricing is going to reduce the demand for billable tracking and allow for more a little bit more flexibility across the organization. But that's probably a ways out for a lot of firms. Flexible off season. So when you're not in busy season, an opportunity to work from home, maybe a day a week, or maybe multiple days a week, or determine your own schedule in the off season is how one firm has positioned this. The important thing is to recognize that this is out there. You can train your managers and train your partner staff to have conversations with your staff, with your junior staff who's on the front lines, to find out what their expectations are, what their needs are, and address them. You want to talk about what public accounting candidates want. They want flexibility in their jobs. If you're not proactive in offering this, they will leave. It's a non-negotiable, because remember the first slide, the war for talent is over and the talent is won. Now, let me speak for a second about what flexibility means to Gusto. This might blow your mind. Unlimited PTO. You take as much time as you need to perform well in your job, but also have a life. The CEO of the company takes 3 vacations per year, and as a way to set an example for the rest of the organization, he's very vocal about this. He even does social media pictures from his vacations and email, sends them into the office to brag about the fact that he's on vacation, which really encourages the team to not feel so bad, like we all tend to do, about taking time off. New parents get, and notice, new parents get a extended maternity and paternity leave, and have the option to go part-time for 2 years after their child is born. You're probably shaking your head when you hear that. But remember, these are great recruiting tactics too. CEOs that take vacation and aren't ashamed of it, unlimited PTO, and a very flexible paternity and maternity arrangement. At Gusto, it's up to the manager to seek what they call work-life blend for their small teams. So maybe you can't offer unlimited PTO, or maybe you can't offer billable staff the ability to go part-time for 2 years. I don't see why you shouldn't personally, but maybe in your arrangement that's not an option. But like I said, think about how this is the competition that you're up against. And I hope it kind of helps to provide a little inspiration there. And by the way, if you have questions, I have the question panel open. Happy to address questions as we go through the presentation here. All right. So we know that public accounting candidates want to work in great cultures, and it's time to invest in that culture. I can tell you a little. I'm going to spend some time talking about millennial generation here. I'm going to spend some time talking about what Gusto does, because we're frankly kind of inspired by how they've built a culture. And the first thing I'll tell you is, if you take this into there is a quirkiness to Gusto which I find very interesting, and this is an actual picture of their reception area in San Francisco. And at Gusto, you don't wear shoes. And that's because the founders who started the company started it in a friend's apartment, and out of respect for working in their apartment, they took their shoes off every day and left them by the front door. And that turned into a scenario where they started wearing colorful socks and kind of got a kick out of what kind of socks everybody wore one day. Well, now as a team of 300, you walk into the office and you put your shoes away, and it's all about showing off those cool socks. Now, that's funny, that's quirky. What you're giving your people is a story, is something they can latch on to as a piece of culture in that organization, and it's a fun thing to recruit on. I don't know what your unique story is, but there is one, and it's usually driven by senior leadership in the organization. So I want to spend a few times telling you about Gusto, and then we'll talk about application to public accounting. But so at Gusto, they offer equity to every single employee, from the person who greets you at the front desk to the engineering team building the product. And the obvious benefit is that it aligns economic outcomes and incentives. So everyone in the organization is aligned. The other benefit is that it ensures that everyone at Gusto feels like an owner of the business. It feels like an owner. It feels very different than being an entry-level employee. Even the receptionist has an equity stake in the company. To drive this idea home, Gusto does not have job titles. For example, there is no junior engineer. The LinkedIn profile of Gusto's chief technology officer simply states that he is a member of the engineering team. And Gusto does this so that they have a team that feels empowered to make an impact, and they don't feel limited by their title or their level. I love that. I love the way that that plays out in an organization, because people at all levels of an organization feel like they can become a leader and can be impacted. They don't have bosses or managers by name. They actually don't even allow to use those words. Instead, they're what they call it is people empowerers. Okay, so people empowerers are called PEs. The role is not to be directive or controlling, as everyone in your individual team is an owner of the business. The PE's owner becomes, how can I help my team remove roadblocks? How can I help my team accomplish its mission? It's fantastic. So here's another cultural point. At Gusto, you receive, on your first year anniversary, employees receive a round trip flight anywhere in the world. Internally, they call it a golden ticket. This is not just a perk, it's a way for Gusto to encourage their staff to have a change of environment, step away, and reflect. And they found that as folks come back as healthier people, that they come back as healthier teammates and greater contributors to the team. Moving on, they also have a hiring committee, which I would highly recommend applying into public accounting. This is a group of cross-functional leaders that meets to approve all the roles that teams would like to open and all offers before they're extended to candidates. So while it takes more time up front, it ensures that Gusto is thoughtful when opening up new roles, not just for today's fire drill, but based on the company's long-term business need. Do you have a hiring committee, or does your firm delegate all of the hiring, planning, and decisions and actions to a single HR leader? And does your partner recruitment committee really debate about what are the key positions that need to be filled for the long term, not just to put a butt in a seat on an audit team, but is there a long-term strategic view on hiring committee through a hiring committee? And if those of you who are in HR and recruiting, this would be so incredibly helpful to you to execute a plan, because you start to become a lot more proactive than reactive. A common phrase you'll hear around the office at Gusto is, we are all recruiters. And this shows that no matter what role you have an equal part in building the company. And in this day and age, as much as we'd like for every firm to use Accountingfly, the best hiring strategy you can have is that of a referral program, an internal referral program. So when you think about Does everyone at every level in the company have an incentive and a belief and a part of their mission to bring in great people? I don't see that a lot, personally. I feel like it's always delegated to the HR leader who has a lot of other things on their plate, and they rely on some old school job boards like Monster.com to find candidates, or LinkedIn Recruiter, and that doesn't ever work. Let your team build the recruiting for you. Another example that's more relevant to the recruiting world is offer calls. So anytime Gusto extends an offer to a candidate, they view it as a celebration. And every person that met the candidate during the interview process shares feedback during the offer call itself of why they're excited for them to join the company. In other words, after the on-site interviews, the people that interviewed them and met them, they all have a conference call to present the offer, and everyone around that call shares why they are so excited to welcome that person into the organization. How many candidates do you make offers to that you close or that ends up joining your organization? Do you think if you did something like this, you would increase that ratio? I guarantee you would. Because all of a sudden, a person feels a part of a team. A lot of times, accounting firms I've seen personally get it almost the exact opposite. The extroverted recruiter wins them over, and then they place them into an audit team where a more introverted team doesn't really make the person feel welcome, and then they leave and go back to their last employer. So when everyone who met you or a candidate throughout the interview process joined the offer call and sent a follow-up email, these candidates feel genuinely that the company cares about them and would like to invest in them as an employee. What a remarkable thing that they do there. By the way, on the first day, the team at Gusto, when you were a new hire at Gusto and you get to your cube on the first day, the people that met you and other people around the company put balloons and notes and some goodies, some swag for the new hire. It makes them feel great to be a part of that team. Would that improve retention in a public accounting firm? We all know that it would. The application of public accounting, hopefully you're taking away some notes, and we'd welcome your feedback here. But the reality here is, as someone who's leading an organization, is you don't get to decide if you have a great place to work or not. That is in the eye of the beholder. And that culture is driven by senior leadership. They drive this culture. They drive the process to make this a special place to work. And people ask me all the time, what does it take to, what are public accounting candidates looking for in their next job? Well, you're hearing it. It's just that we need to see more of these types of policies driven from senior leaders inside public accounting organizations. All right. Let's move on to the other big one is work-life balance. So from a formal work-life balance approach, and this helps a lot with recruiting. I'll first share you with what Gusto does, and then we'll talk about application to public accounting. I mentioned this briefly earlier. Gusto offers 4 months of maternity leave, and parents can work part-time for up to 2 years after the birth of their child. That's a radical notion, but I want you to keep the goal in mind here is that Gusto is able to out-recruit and out-retain everyone in Silicon Valley. And they're out-recruiting public accounting firms in that part of the country too. Unlimited PTO, you take the time that you need. I mentioned the flyaway and the golden ticket. So those are some formal work-life balance. And they believe, and as do we, that it's really more of a work-life blend. With mobile phones, we never leave our office. So it's really, how can you create a workplace that leads to a better life? It's not something that you ever leave anymore. If you're plugged into the cloud, and most people are, accounting work can be done anywhere. Clients can contact us anywhere. So the change in mindset, the paradigm shift here is, well, if we know that we're always plugged in, how do we start to create blend that can facilitate a better life for the employee? But informally, these social and cultural norms in a company are set by the senior leadership in the company. And the example here is the senior leadership needs to empower the team to own work-life balance. Remember the example earlier about the CEO publicly talking about vacation and sending pictures back to the team? If you're a partner on the call, you don't realize it, but we tend to create cultures where we disincentivize people to take time off, and then they feel lousy for doing it. What if they felt great about doing it and felt like it was the right thing to do and actually made them a better employee? They will do that if you show them that that is the way. And just by achieving that, you'll start to see work-life balance truly change. I think one thing that Gusto does, this has a huge application for you, is that their HR teams train managers on how to approach this topic with their staff by and finding out where they are in burnout and what do they need on a personal level to achieve balance and blend. Do they need to take time off? Do they need to take a day off? Do they need a break? And what are the individual circumstances that could be helpful that you'd be willing to offer? So are you thinking about how your teams all work differently? And are you using, and this is always people roll their eyes, but are you trying to spread out tax season work and educate clients, or maybe even provide incentives for your clients so the tax season is a little bit more spread out and not so bottom loaded? So incredibly important here is that work-life balance and flexibility are driven by the individual, and the cultural aspect in the firms are driven by the senior leadership inside the organization. One thing I want to just touch on here is the concept of the right fit. And I missed this earlier where we're talking about culture. We're talking a lot about how you sell great candidates on the organization. But one thing that's critical to do is to make sure you have the right candidates in the organization that you're extending all these benefits to. And one thing that we know Gusto does and that we endorse as well is those hiring committees that we talked about earlier do check-ins of new staff. And they want to make sure that the staff fit culturally, they fit the value system, and they have the responsibility level that is required to operate in a work-life balanced and a flexible firm. And the saying is to hire slow and fire fast, because if they're not a fit, you need to weed out the players who are not the right fit, and they can find another place to work. I mean, your company depends on it. Behavioral assessments go a long way in that as well. Here's a picture of a boomerang. Why do I have it here? Because a part of a strategy that I think is very key here is rehiring. If you are offering the things that public accountants want, and you're the type of place that they want to work in, you will still lose good people. The curiosity of working in private industry is too great. Those minor pay bumps, 25% to go join a local corporation, they will steal people away. However, in the panel discussion, Marianne from Gusto, our representative from the AICPA, a representative from a top 50 firm, all talked about how important it is to proactively re-recruit your alumni. Because what happens in public accounting, especially, I think the hardcore public accountants leave for maybe, we know why they leave. They leave because they have a work-life balance perception. Then they go into working at a hospital and they hate it and it's boring. Well, one of your greatest recruiting resources ought to be your alumni. So Marianne from Gusto even suggested this would be the most important piece you can do to attract people, because Google has an entire alumni relations team. Now, Google's Google, but people do go back. A high percentage of Google's hires comes from a rehire program. So Eide Bailly has a focus on alumni retention. These boomerangs are a real opportunity for you, because if you're doing the right things and you have created a great place to work, the talent ought to come back. So one process that you can adapt here in a public accounting firm is to number one, during exit interviews, set the stage for the rehire, and and additionally set the stage for the person who's leaving to become your client if they don't come back. Build an alumni network, events, a mailing list, an information share, a newsletter. What a great marketing tactic to either rehire or let them hire you as a client to leverage your alumni. And when somebody does leave from a retention standpoint, just as an aside, if it doesn't work out, you need your recruiters and your recruiting committee to really look into what we could have done or they could have done to prevent the hire, or how it could have went better. And there should be a post hiring brief if somebody leaves on every candidate to understand what went well and what didn't go so well. You should also encourage your recruiters, and if you're a partner, to say no to candidates if they don't feel they're a good fit for the organization. Your recruiter should be that front line. But as you start to review hires and mishires, which is common, you'll start to, if you formally review these, you will start to find why certain candidates weren't a fit and why certain candidates were a great fit. So how do you measure? How do you improve? Well, first is checks and balances. We encourage, and Gusto, following their lead, does an engagement survey that they call the G-Pulse survey, and at the 90-day mark of a new hire. So this is going to measure two things. One is the new hire engaged? Has the honeymoon phase ended, and or are they happy with where they work? But this is also an opportunity for you to measure if the candidate was the right hire or not, to do an interview with their boss, their manager, their leader, and find out if the candidate is a good fit. This is an opportunity to fire fast. If they're not, if they're a great candidate, it's also an opportunity to reinforce why they're at your organization. A lot of really important opinions are formed by new hires in those first 3 months. You want to reinforce the positives in a formal meeting at a 90-day mark after they complete the survey. Train your managers to ask the right questions to make sure that you're offering what these public accounting candidates wanted in the first place. And the best way to do that is by training your managers to conduct a stay interview, which is essentially asking your best performers, what is it going to take to keep you at our organization? Talk early and often about the partner track compensation advantage. I don't know about how it is in your firm, but I don't see this enough, where we're reinforcing the notion that if you stick out, through the senior and manager level, the compensation for partners is very strong. You're better off in the long run staying through partner track. Even if they leave, you've planted a seed for them to return. Remember, compensation was the fourth item on the list of what public accounting candidates want. Exit interviews are critical because you can track what went wrong, what did you offer or what did you lack in your offering to the candidate, and also it's the opportunity to tee up boomerangs or even potential clients. So if we kind of go back and look at a recap here, we believe that if you look outside of our own industry, you can see inspiration for what other companies are doing. And as untraditional as what companies like Gusto are doing, it's so important to see what's going on outside of our own industry to be effective at building and keeping the best teams. And we know that what public accounting candidates clearly want revolve around working in a place that has a strong culture, working in a place that offers flexibility and work-life balance and a mission, and that pays at the competitive level. None of it is easy, but there is a roadmap And I hope for you that learning what Gusto does, and learning what other companies outside of accounting are doing can be helpful in designing your own policies that fit the needs of your firm. So my contact information is here on this slide, jeff@accountingfly.com. 850-712-5440 is my direct number. You're welcome to call me. We would love your feedback. We are going to keep having conversations about these topics and bringing in other examples of companies that are doing it right. If you have any questions or comments, I'd welcome them in the 2 or 3 minutes that we have remaining here in the question panel. And if not, I hope you have a great afternoon, and I appreciate your attention, and thank you for participating in this. So that's it for now. With no questions, we're going to move on, and thank you for your time. So everybody have a great day. Good luck out there, and keep in touch. Bye-bye.